Welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. I am your host Taylor McWaters, and here are the top 10 most unsettling things people did in medieval times. Starting our list off at number 10, medieval meals. Seeing as the holidays just passed by, I figure there's no better time to mention a medieval holiday tradition. What's your traditional holiday meal? Is it turkey? Is it boiled goose? What's your thing? Invite me next year. I'll try anything. I love it. Holiday meals back in medieval times? Yeah, it was a little different than what we see on our tables today. For example, swans. Stuffed swans. That would be a little jarring to see, no? Swans today, we see them traveling in pairs and we don't hunt them because that would be pretty rude, no? But in medieval times, swans were hot property. They were a delicacy of the upper class. Christmas swan pie. For you and yours. Enjoy. Merry Christmas. I'd be crying on Christmas Day cutting into that. They would stuff swans with beef, which I don't recommend. Maybe it's good? I don't know. I'm curious, but no, you can't. No way. Other medieval meals included peacocks, cranes, turtle doves, sparrows, and herons. Herons? Man, imagine Christmas morning, there's a heron on the table waiting for you, stuffed with another heron. You're like, what? Come on, Dad. Number 9, the London tornado. Hold on to your seats for this one. On October 16th, 1091, harsh winds from the southwest took out 600 houses and a handful of churches, which was awful back then. Today that's like not too bad. Back then that was devastating. That's pretty much every house in existence. The Church of St. Mary was a rather unholy place to be that day, as the tornado 2 men in there and it tore up the roof and the timbers. It just destroyed everything. The rafters were actually ripped from the structure and then slammed down into the earth. About half of the rafters were buried into the ground. That's how much force was thrashing them around. Tornadoes are so terrifying. That's one of my biggest fears. I feel a strong gust of wind outside and I'm immediately back inside, just like that. Number 8, medieval tennis. Here we go. Not to be confused with Mario Tennis, although that's probably just as hard to play, I'm guessing. Medieval tennis was introduced in 1485, and just like any other insane ball games back then, this too was eventually banned. If you weren't a noble, you were not allowed to play tennis. Or else you could only play if it was Christmas. Yeah, grab some Christmas swan and then go play tennis. There we go. That's a great day for all. Many believed tennis was disrupting labor and encouraging violence and gambling. Yeah, tennis was doing all of that. I mean, to be fair, I don't completely disagree there. My swing's pretty awful. I get pretty upset sometimes. Tennis was eventually referred to as the sport of kings, both because King Henry VII and VIII were both pretty good. Yeah, they were like the Venus and Serena of medieval times. Apparently they were killing it. Only, you know, not athletic and also not good at tennis and not nice people at all. I mean, why else would you ban the sport, really? Now it's making sense. Number 7, Disappearance of the Norse. I just watched The Northman and that was a great time. That movie is amazing. Totally underrated. I'm gonna start barking at people now like he did. That's a great way to get what you want. Just start barking at people in public. Norse mythology is fascinating, yet still quite mysterious. They settled in Greenland for over 400 years, and they left quite the mark, I'd say. We look at Norse history as violent and bearded. Bearded and violent. Maybe a dragon or two, I don't know. But Vikings, they invented hockey. They skied. Women had a large amount of rights compared to what we usually see on this channel, and still even today. But one of life's greatest mysteries are where Greenland's Vikings went. Yeah, they're just gone like that. They seemingly disappeared. The only remains are crumbling church walls that were used for barely 500 years, so not many clues. Archaeologists are still unsure what happened to the Norse population. Maybe it was a plague, maybe it was the Inuit, or perhaps they settled back in Europe. It's really hard to tell because, you know, it was quite a while ago. Recent excavations provide hints that they settled in the West, most likely relying on trade to survive. Maybe they just followed the goods and went over yonder. Number 6, Viking funerals. Now, I know this isn't that messed up per se, but I really wish that we still did Viking funerals. They're pretty epic, right? They'd be way more fun. Instead of carrying that 900-pound casket down the aisle for 14 city blocks, getting all tired and shaky, Vikings would do it a little different. Vikings would do it one out of 2 ways, and both were pretty epic to witness. Funeral number 1, they would bury the body, that was the classic, but they would leave stone circles around the shallow graves that they dug. Or they would do a burial mound or grave fields, usually after a battle. Vikings were pagan, right? So they believed that the more smoke during a cremation, the better. So bring it on. That was their way of reaching the afterlife, and boats as well. They symbolized safe passage to the afterlife in Norse mythology. So Vikings thought of a wonderful idea. They would shape these stones around the grave, they would shape them like a ship, or these mounds would be shaped like a ship of some sorts. But high-ranking Norsemen, they would be buried with their actual real-life ships. In 834 AD, the Osberg ship burial honored 2 women. This ship vessel was 70 feet long and 17 feet wide, with 15 oars on each side. It was mighty, and it was discovered in Norway on a farm. So the flaming arrow thing that we all saw in Game of Thrones, that's all pretty much hogwash. That wasn't that common at all. Number 5, Tavern History. Cheers, here we go, grab a beverage for this one. Before the Middle Ages, there were still taverns, right? Places where alcohol was sold. Now this goes back thousands of years. Taverns existed during ancient Roman days. And in ancient Greece even, the lech was a fancy club that served food to its members as well as strangers sometimes. Ancient Greek taverns, imagine making ale and flip-flops in the sun, that'd be amazing. The Code of Hammurabi from ancient Babylonia around 1750 BCE, they had the death penalty in place for those who improperly diluted beer, where in medieval times you would get charged if you did that. So I'm getting a little bit better. Imagine losing your head because you threw in too many hops. That's horrible. Number 4, the ride home. Okay, medieval taverns, medieval times, sounds like a good time until you have to, go home. You can't get an Uber, can't call your dad to come pick you up. Now what? The medieval age was a lawless time. People would go to the tavern, slam tons of ale, and then they would just ride a horse home. Yeah, not very safe, not a great plan. More often than not, these guys would get drunk, they would fall off, or they would just get lost. Of course they would get lost, right? It's like playing Skyrim for the first time. You're like, where am I? This makes no sense. In the early 1300s, it was common for your husband to have a few with the boys and then fall into a well or something and not see it. The guy leaves the bar with a lantern, doesn't see the well in front of him, falls in and drowns. Yeah, it happened. Drink responsibly, folks. There was actually one report of a man who was on his way home from the local tavern and he had to go to the washroom, right? Break the seal, classic. So he decided to pull over, again, on a horse, and then go in a pond. Except this time, this poor lad, he fell in and he drowned. Now, of course, it's bound to happen. A bunch of drunk guys in chainmail walking around uneven roads. Yeah, you're gonna roll an ankle, It's probably gonna happen. Guy's not even intoxicated. He's like, yeah, the roads are just terrible. I just got lost. Number 3, illegal nose blowing. Think you feel a sneeze coming on? Well, think again, pal. You better hold it in and then walk somewhere else really fast. Or else, jail time. Yeah, back in the 12th century, horse racing was born in a Suffolk town called Newmarket. Now, once King James I got set up in 1606, the sport became more widely known, a major form of entertainment, as it still is today. Eventually, laws had to be put in place to protect these, prized horses, right? These horses were so famous. So now if you think you could walk around the streets and, blow your nose, think again, pal, because that would be illegal. Yeah, don't do that. Don't blow your nose outside. You go hide in your basement and do that, sicko. Yeah, it was once illegal to blow your nose in the street. How insane is that? Because officials didn't want horses getting ill. Not other humans, horses. In fact, if you were outside sick at all, you had to pay a fine. Yeah, imagine you're in a wagon on your way to the doctor's, then you get pulled over for a temperature check. You're like, oh, not today, come on, please. Number 2, the great drowning of men. Yeah, this one's not so fun, so I'll chill out a little bit. The Middle Age coastal areas around the North Sea were a hotspot for flooding. The world's changing, things are happening, water's rising, people are drowning. Historically, there were numerous reports of flooding. For some reason, between the 11th and 15th centuries, this was like a hotspot. This area would get swamped. And it's even larger than you could possibly imagine. The St. Marcellius flood took place on January 16th, 1362. The death toll here, I mean, it's really impossible to tell for sure, but historians believe of somewhere around 25,000 people. That's a lot of people in the medieval times. That is a large amount of space gone like that. Atlantic gales were to blame for this massive rush of water. This event was so massive, it actually goes hand in hand with the Great Wind of 1362. Yeah, one day you got water to worry about, and the next day you got wind. You're like, cool, medieval times sucks. And finally, number 1, one name. This last one here is kind of fun and it blows my mind. It's so funny to think about. I never really thought about this before, but what was it like when we didn't have surnames, right? Before then. Surnames were introduced to England in 1066, but before then, well, you were just Mike. Know what I mean? There's another Mike, then that's it. Now you guys had to fight to death. No, I'm just kidding. But at first, surnames were a little different. The way they handled them was almost like a description, You would meet a guy and he'd say, hey, I'm Mike Red. And then red signified his red hair. So you're like, Mike Red, got it. We'll forget you. Makes sense. It's kind of like what we do now on our phone, right? How we name people on our phone. Mike Work, Other Mike Work with like a thumbs down. You're like, okay, I know which one's texting me now. It was like that. But the best part, back then, your name could legally change over time. So one day you'd be Mike Red, but then eventually your hair falls out, you age, you get old, you're stressed because, well, it's the medieval times, I get it. And then once that happens, you change your name to match your new description. Now you're Mike Ball. Ball meant bald back in the medieval times. Isn't that amazing? Next video, I'll be Taylor Sideburns Only McWaters. I'll just change it up, why not? I'll add 2. Those are the top 10 most unsettling things people did in medieval times. If you want a part 2, comment below. Hit the thumbs up. Send me fan mail via pigeons. I don't know, do what you want, get creative. See you next time on Most Amazing Top 10. Bye.